uh, everyone, and welcome. This is Sara from Yarn Lab. And I'm so excited to have her here. I learned how to. I learned a lot of fiber prep from her. When I was first learning how to spin. And in fact, I think I was watching, it was YouTube videos that made me learn how to use my hand carders.
Yeah. Those are some old YouTube videos too.
Yeah. But thank you so much for coming on here. And at a to be determined date, I will be over on your channel.
Absolutely. Yeah, we will do the reciprocal.
I'm very excited to be come on your channel, but my dog needs to have her leg amputated, so we will determine that date once I know more about that, because dogs family members come before everything else.
Absolutely. And I'm not going anywhere, so there's no rush.
Yeah, you're up in Canada, up in Alberta. I hear it's a little snow. I'm guessing it's a little snowy there.
It's snowy, but we actually so I'm in central Alberta and we have what's called a Chinook right now. So yesterday it was about, and these are centigrade degrees, but it was about -20 with the wind chill, which is quite cold. And today we're up above freezing. So we had like a 30-degree temperature inversion overnight. And we'll have some, still not like shorts and t-shirt weather, but warm for winter weather for the next couple days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Ginny did have a question for you before we get started here. Her question is, do you have any sheep and what kind?
Oh, I wish I had sheep. It is sort of in the long-term plan. We do live on an acreage property, rurally in central Alberta, and we have chickens right now. And we've got 4 acres of pasture, so eventually sheep. But I've got 2 6-year-olds and a 2-year-old, so they keep me busy enough for the time being. But I consider it sort of my sheep dreams, and I think sometime within the next maybe 3 to 4 years we'll get the first couple of sheep, because that's the dream, is to have my own hand spinning flock.
That would be great. Mm-hmm. Hey, what type of sheep do you think you would like?
I don't know. That's a tough one, because I mean, like, you would want some of the fine wool breeds like Rambouillet or Merino, but they're quite large. And I know a lot of people do better with like Icelandic herds because they're quite small. They're easier to sort of shear yourself and handle yourself. So it'll sort of depend. I know that there's a blue-faced Leicester flock that I think used to be in Saskatchewan. They're up in northern Alberta now. There's a woman who does Scotland. So I think part of it too is what's available to you within a reasonable distance of where you live, But yeah, so probably the dream would be something big and squishy, but more likely than not, it will probably be a herd of mischievous Icelandic sheep.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Icelandic sheep, I haven't spun a whole lot with wool from Icelandic sheep, but I think they do have quite a crimp to them.
So they're actually they're a dual coated breed. I've got a couple of, because I have a couple of fleeces waiting to be spun. I've got a couple of Icelandic fleeces sitting around, and so they're not so it's like they have oh my god, it's like a tog and a thel. There's like a long hair that is quite thick and a little bit grittier, or it's like the guard hairs on a dog, right? And then they have the undercoat that's soft and fluffy. So the traditional Icelandic will spin both together, but you can sort of comb them out and get just the softer bit. The 2 fleeces I have are still pretty soft because they are lamb fleeces. But yeah,
Yeah,
so
lamb fleeces I hear are always
always
is the
softer.
softest they'll ever be.
Yeah. I think I do have a video on my channel from way back when I spun some Icelandic wool in sort of the traditional style, which was to make a roll egg and spin a very thick singles yarn.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, spun some way back when, and I'm sitting on some fleeces waiting for the time in my life to spin them.
Yeah, cool. So I do have some questions for you.
Yeah.
You know, so how did you get into fiber art?
So my paternal grandmother, my grandma, Mary Edna, she was a prolific knitter. Growing up, we had like it would be not an overestimation to say well over 100 sweaters between my brother and I from her.
Wow.
And she would knit probably close to 100 sweaters a year. Most of them ended up donations to church auctions or the hospital auctions, like where they raffle off hand knits. And so I grew up every time we would visit her. They lived in like sort of a retirement community. There wasn't a lot to do, and you would just sit, and she would bring out tangled bags of yarn, and I would untangle and ball up yarn because she would buy mill ends yarn. So oftentimes it would be skeins, but then just tucked into a bag into a tangle. So we would bind yarn at her house, and eventually she taught me to knit. And I knit casually throughout my childhood and a little bit in university. Picked up crocheting somewhere along the way. But when she passed, which was probably 12 years ago now, it really it was, I think, part of wanting to identify more with her and to remember her. I really started to dive in. And then once you go down that rabbit hole, it just sucks you
Oh
all the
yeah,
way
that's
in, right?
definitely a rabbit hole.
Yeah. But I have all of her old patterns. I have all of her old knitting needles. She knit on straight needles though, so I don't often knit on them, but I have them all. And
Yeah.
and she knit exclusively with acrylic yarn. And her reasoning for that was that as a girl growing up in Prince Edward Island, if you wanted to knit, you had to spin your own yarn. It was a lot of work. And so with the advent of acrylic yarns in the 70s, in
Mm-hmm.
every color available to you for nothing, to her, she couldn't see why you would want to spend the effort to make your own yarns or to use wool when you just had acrylic so plentiful. And so all of our cherished childhood sweaters are still in beautiful condition, of course, being acrylic yarn. But it also goes to show you that you can produce amazing heirloom knits. You can knit color work, you can knit steeks, you can knit cables, you can do all these things that I think there's a little bit of an attitude in the fiber community that are, oh, you have to use wool, you have to use non-superwash wool, you can't do color work unless it's, mill spun non-superwash wool. But you absolutely can do everything just with,
Mm-hmm.
the affordability and accessibility of acrylic yarns. So I do occasionally still knit with them, but I mean, the wool yarns call to me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like I've been known to be a bit of a yarn snob, but at the same time, I actually do work at Michael's.
Yeah.
So I can't be too much of a yarn snob because as I've got as because I do because there are because I am the one that people go to at Michael's if they have questions about yarn.
Yeah.
Like my coworkers will call me up on the radio and say, "Hey, Allie, someone's got a question about yarn." I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, um, I always feel bad if I don't know anything about like cricket, but so I'll tell people, I can talk your ear off about yarn. But
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
I would
Um,
have a problem working at Michael's. I think my whole paycheck would be turned right back into craft supplies and follow me home from the store every day.
Yeah, I have to be careful. All right. What are some of your favorite wools and fibers to spin and knit with?
Um, I mean, Corriedale. So I mean, like most commercial and like sort of indie dyed yarns tend to be merinos, and they're great.
Mm-hmm.
But I've really come to love like a springier yarn, and so Corriedale has a real great springiness to it. It's not
Yeah.
maybe as soft as like a merino, but it's great. The first fleece I ever had brought home was a BFL fleece, and I have some BFL sock yarn that I love. I've knit a shawl in BFL, so that's another real great one. That's Blue Face Leicester. Um, yeah, so a little bit more life to that yarn. Some of those commercial merino yarns just they almost seem dead, and a part of that comes from the superwash treatment and the way that they're milled, I think. But
Mm-hmm.
it's nice to have a little bit more life, I think, in the fiber and in the yarn.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've noticed it's easier to draft Corriedale than.
Oh, absolutely. If you're like going to learn spinning, do not go and buy a super fine merino sliver. That's the the wrong fiber
Yeah,
to
that was
learn
my
on
first problem.
because it'll slip right out of your hands. When I first learned, and I recommend this to people, I bought a pile of the Wool of the Andes top from Knit Picks. It's super inexpensive. I dyed it up with food coloring, and it's rustic enough because it's just sort of a mixed wool. If you've knit with Wool of the Andes from Knit Picks, you know it's not nearly as soft as merino, but it has that grip. The fibers, the scales on the fibers, like I mean, when you want to spin your beginner yarn, merino is so ultra fine and those scales are so small, and especially if you foolishly purchased a superwash merino sliver, you're going to be out of luck. Um, it's those scales on the yarn that help one fiber to grab the next fiber and incorporate it into your singles. And so if you don't want your fiber to run right out of your hands, something a little bit more rustic and a little less soft is definitely the best starting point for learning.
So, do you also have a love-hate relationship with merino wool?
Obviously super like the finished product is lovely. This shawl here is probably mostly merino and it's all hand spun.
Oh wow!
Um, but yeah, it's just for learning, it's not where you want to start. It's shorter fibers, it's slicker
Yeah,
fibers, and they want to run away from you. So, Wool of the Andes or Corriedale are both really great choices for learning fiber.
absolutely. Hey,
Mhm.
it looks like we have even more
Yeah,
people
here now.
joining us.
Hello.
I think someone. Can you? Are you able to read the most recent comments?
Let's see. So it popped up and then it's disappears. Let me see if I can. I made you. There we go. Um, Looks like it's Judy. Very good point about acrylic. She also says sheep are fun. I think your kids will enjoy them. Black Welsh Mountain. I've spun Black Welsh Mountain once. It was very campy.
Yeah. um, I have some Black Welsh Mountain in my basement. Approximately 5 pounds that needs to go through the picker,
Oh wow.
and and so I'm gonna be doing some like unintentional ASMR videos where
Yep.
I just run them through the picker, the fibers through the
Yeah,
picker.
for sure.
Or I had a few people comment that on a video I did and with the picker or explaining what the picker was, where they said that it would make great unintentional ASMR videos. So I'm
Yeah,
like, okay, sure. And and it needs to go through the picker anyway. Why not turn on my camera?
absolutely. That is one
Alright.
piece of processing equipment I don't actually have is a picker. Just
Yeah.
fingers.
I like every couple of birthdays or days or something, I or Christmas, I get another fiber tool or something.
Yeah, for sure.
My mom got me the picker as an early Christmas present, and I really love it, and it like and I can't say enough good things about it. And it's from BM Fiber Farms. It's handmade, and it's great work. All right. Do you think that fiber art has had an impact on your health?
Absolutely. I think that like things I know about me is that if I don't feel like I'm producing, like if I don't feel productive, then that's really not good for my mental health. And prior to becoming a full-time mom, I was in grad school and very, very busy with my education. And then I had my kids, and parenting is a lot of supervising your kids. And the days can be repetitive, and you don't necessarily at the end of the week feel like you've accomplished much, you know? And
Hmm.
so I find that whenever I go through periods where I'm not producing, like if I haven't finished any projects, if I haven't created anything, then that's when my mental health just starts to spiral. And so, the reward and the I don't know, you get a boost. Whenever you finish a project or try something new, it really does perk you right up. So for me,
Yeah.
like a critical part to my good mental health, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I yeah, I have PTSD, and so when I go through dark periods,
Mhm.
it's um the only thing, it sometimes seems like the only thing I am being productive at is knitting or crocheting or spinning.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
uh and I that's one thing I encourage on my over on my channel, is just you know trying to be productive, and and
Hi, James.
and it really has a positive impact on your health. What was
Yeah.
that comment?
It
So,
was just hi there from a James.
hi, James.
Yeah. The other thing too is that if you followed along with me, I have twins. Um, and they had a number of health hurdles early in life. So we spent an awful lot of time in hospital waiting rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing like knitting or crocheting or doing something with your hands to dispel some of that nervous energy that comes when you're waiting in those situations.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
So definitely knit my way through a couple OR visits and yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but
Oh,
yeah, I hope.
you know what? They're totally great now. And if anything, our experiences with our twins has given us tremendous perspective and respect for parents who are dealing with bigger hurdles and challenges. So, you know,
Well,
they're
that's
6 years
great.
old and you wouldn't have known that they had anything other than a normal start to life, and we're grateful for that.
Hmm.
Now it's just my own emergency visits that seem to crop up. I have a tendency to pop a kidney stone now once every other year.
Well, I hope I hope you don't have any more health problems in the future.
Me
Or
too.
yeah. Um. And I can say that I know you're making a difference as a mom. I went to grad school for early childhood education, and those first, 5, 7 years are so important to the development of their brains. So I'm
Mhm.
sure you're making a difference, even if it's not obvious.
We do our best, even if sometimes I want to put my boys out to live in the yard.
Well, spending time outside is good for kiddos.
Yep.
I was, all right. So, what projects are you working on right now? Like, I can see you're knitting.
Yeah. I'm just finishing off a cuff here on. So I'm probably gonna run into yarn chicken on this one. So I've knit the raglan yoke and I'm knitting my sleeves first, and then we'll see how far the body goes. But got 2 sleeves just about finished, and this is actually the campside cardigan. It's a really old Alicia Plummer pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And the yarn that I'm using, do I have another skein of it around? Is Flock Fiber Studio. They're an Alberta dyer, and I've had this
Mm-hmm.
yarn in my stash and this project queued up since about 2017. So I've decided that this year is the year of sort of clearing some of those old projects that you maybe accumulate yarn or fiber for with the best of intentions, and then it just sits and you accumulate more. So
Yeah.
trying to work some old stash out. So
Yeah.
I've got this
Last
one in
year,
my
I
hand.
wanted to try to finish some projects, and I did finish some big projects, and
Mhm.
I still have projects to finish. But um, was there a question in there? I think I saw
Yeah.
someone ask.
Any suggestions for getting projects started for kids? Um, I mean, there are certainly ways to make things accessible for kids. We've dyed yarn with Kool-Aid together with my boys. So I offered to knit them some socks and we got Kool-Aid out. You could also use Easter egg tablets. Those are both really accessible, um, safe ways to dye some food or dye some yarn up with your kids. And then they were pretty pleased and excited when they got their finished socks from the yarn that they had dyed themselves.
I bet that was really fun for them.
Yeah. My boys have an endless fascination with my spinning wheel. They're not quite there yet to learn how to do it. I know some people, like you do hear stories of people teaching their kids how to knit or how to spin right from a young age. Um, so far, my kids haven't had enough interest to follow through on that. My son Alex is he's in his head he's into the idea of learning how to sew, but every time we sit down at the sewing machine to try and do something, he gets pretty scatterbrained and is done with it after a minute or two. So, but I think, for me,
Imagine a 6-year-old getting scatterbrained and losing interest in something.
it's, impossible to believe that, right? But yeah, I think I'm not certainly an expert yet, I don't think, on how to really engage or get my kids fully interested. But they do, when we knit a new hat, they come into my stash and pick out a yarn for that. Um, and I think that there's something to be said for growing up with that understanding that it is possible, right? Just being exposed.
Right.
It
Absolutely.
means you grow up, and to you, a sweater isn't just something you buy at the store. It is something that it is possible to make yourself if you got that itch later on in life. So
Absolutely.
yeah. And I mean, at the very least, even if they never develop an interest in the fiber crafts, there's also something to be said for having an understanding of what it really takes to make a garment. And then maybe you look at fast fashion a little differently because of the understanding of what it takes to make a garment, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. But for now, I mean, if I
Definitely.
can tear them
I
away from Pokemon cards and and I think Beyblades is what they're into right now, to get 2 minutes of interest in what mommy's doing, I'm grateful for that.
absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I'm gonna switch chairs
All right,
here so that I can. Uh, and sorry, my ring light is not working.
that's all
I
right.
don't know why it's not working, but There we go. Better light.
So you're knitting a scarf? Is that what you've got wrapped around
What?
you? Are you knitting a scarf?
Yes.
Nice.
I'm knitting this scarf with hand spun yarn
Yeah, I was gonna say it certainly looks
and
good.
rambouillet wool from your fibery godmother. Yeah.
That's great.
And I Leia, what are you even doing in Doughy Town? I have two dogs. um yeah, I got some rambouillet wool and some Falkland wool, and this is the Falkland wool.
Mhm.
I oh and I got them in the same colorway. But I spun them up in two different ways.